Hey folks, welcome back to my series on Memoir 44, and today I'm going to be looking at the Mediterranean Theater expansion pack that has come out for Memoir 44. When I went over the original base game, I had a few guys, one in particular, but I think a couple other jumped in there as well, comment on how Amerocentric the base game was, how it was Americans fighting Germans, and while some of the scenarios allowed for those green models to be representing British units or so forth and so on, or Canadian units in some of the things, it looked very American-centric, that it was all about America's part in the war. Well, the Mediterranean Theater solves that problem for you, pal. Let me tell you. Let's take a look at it. Now, as we open up the Mediterranean pack, the slipcase comes off, and we open up to all the goodness that's inside. Of course, you'll find that it comes with yet another rule book, and the rule book, of course, gives us good descriptions and pictures of everything that comes into it. One thing that I did fail to mention on the other terrain pack, I think I failed to mention it, but the book does give scenarios to have for you. There are 8 scenarios altogether that bring in the Mediterranean Theater. And those forces are mainly British forces, but there are also Italian forces in there, and then they're all going against the Germans. It gives you that, and it gives you a bunch of new tan figures for the British, and more of the desert terrain hexes that we saw some of in the terrain pack. And then there are also some more kinds of badges and counters and roadblocks, bunkers, and that type of stuff. We'll take a look at all of this in a little bit more detail. Now, starting off with the plastic miniatures that come in the Mediterranean Theater pack. These are representative of the British and Italian forces that were fighting against the Germans in the Mediterranean Theater. And these, we'll start off with the British. The models are, first of all, the Desert Rat figures. You get 42 of those. They are the infantry figures, and then you also get 24 Crusader style tanks here, and then you also get 6 ordnance, which are the 25-pounder guns that the British used a lot in the Mediterranean Theater. They were howitzer type fire. And then you also have the anti-tank gun. The anti-tank guns will have in the scenario booklet, will have a shield that looks very similar to that right there on the scenario. And then that will denote that one of these guys here gets placed in that hex along with the infantry unit that is there. So these are the different models that come with the Mediterranean Theater expansion. Some of the different counters that come in the expansion pack for the Mediterranean Theater, these are not necessarily ones that are new, but they are ones that are showcased, I guess you could say, within the Mediterranean Theater. First of all, the British medal comes, the Victorian Cross, and that will be used in certain scenarios to show that there is a victory point condition in an area of the battlefield or something to that effect. Then there are also more minefield tokens that come with the set, as you can see. Just turn it over, they're all the same. And then another thing that came is these exit tokens, and basically this will denote areas of the field that one side or the other is trying to reach in order to go further on to the next objective. They're used in a couple of different ways. First of all, if it is on the board like that, it simply means you're trying to exit either this way or that way. But if 2 of them are used, the scenario will place them like this, and that will show that the range in between the 2 hexes that these guys are in present the window of exit that the forces are to use. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. In addition to those counters, we will also have new shields that represent different specialized troops in some way, shape, or form. First of all, the British Royal Engineers will be used in some scenarios, as well as German combat engineers, and then British SAS, Special Air Service, is used in some scenarios. British Special Forces, Italian Army, forgot to put those in there, Italian Army, and then also Italian Special Forces there on the end. So these are simply used in some scenarios to denote different rules that will apply to those specific or country-specific troops. British forces have a special rule applied to them. I call it the AC/DC rule. It's called the stiff upper lip. And basically what this means is that if a ground unit survives an enemy close assault combat without retreating and is reduced down to a single figure, can immediately battle back with 1 die. Now, this is a new thing for Memoir up to this point, because normally the person who is attacking only gets to roll dice. But with this stiff upper lip rule, if the unit gets reduced down to 1, or even if it starts with 1 and survives the combat, it can roll a counterattack, so to speak, using 1 die. So that's the stiff upper lip rule for the British Commonwealth Command Forces. The Italian Royal Army Command rules, first of all, they have motorized divisions, which means that Italian ground units can retreat 1, 2, or 3 hexes for each flag rolled against them. So they can get out of a sticky situation a lot easier than their other compatriots can. Then they also have artillery bravery. This is another rule for the Italian Royal Army forces. So basically this rule allows artillery units always, no matter what kind of hex that they're in, to ignore 1 flag rolled against them. And this is to symbolize the Italian artillery and the remarkable courage that they had throughout the war. They were known for, even when they knew their guns wouldn't affect the enemy, they would still fire them until they were overrun. They would never retreat. So in order to kind of pay homage to that, they are given this rule in the Mediterranean theater expansion. Another rule that comes up with the North African desert is that armor overrun combat. When an armor unit causes another unit to retreat, or when they totally get rid of a unit, they can take ground, but then they can also battle again. In the North African desert rules, however, they can move into the vacated hex and then move 1 more additional hex and then battle again. So when you're into the desert, to talk about that tank warfare, they've amended the overrun rules that way. All the other rules, though, remain in effect as far as taking ground and so forth and so on. Then you'll also be getting a number of terrain tiles that come with the Mediterranean theater, and some of those are here. Well, most of them are represented. Some of them that are not represented I've already gone over in the terrain pack. For example, the Oasis terrain is also included in this, and then this one right here, the towns and villages of North Africa, they're treated just like regular towns and villages in the original base game, but wanted to at least show them. This guy right here, the supply tent and HQ, they are a new battlefield condition. If an enemy unit captures your HQ supply tent, your opponent selects one of your command cards from your hand at random and discards it. And then until you take that hex back, you are playing with 1 fewer command card than the scenario allows you to. So this is an important battlefield condition that you need to make sure you protect. The escarpments, like this right here, they are hexes that are impassable to all ground units. They also block line of sight. So these are kind of like mountain hexes, but a little bit different, I guess. Then there are also hills, desert hills, or dunes, I guess you could say. They have the same effect as hills in the original game. The palm forests act just like regular forests in the original base game. The ergs or ridges. A unit moving up onto a ridge has to stop and cannot move any further that turn. When battling an enemy unit that is up on top of a ridge, infantry and armor will reduce their number of battle dice by 1. Artillery battle dice are, of course, not reduced. But when battling an enemy unit from a contiguously adjacent ridge, there is no battle dice restrictions. So these are very similar to Hills, but they just look different, so they changed. They provided those rule sets a little bit there. Airfields are also part of this expansion. There are no combat restrictions or movement restrictions, and they do not block line of sight. If I remember correctly, most of these are going to be used as victory point conditions. Roads are also in the expansion, and if you remember from the terrain pack, roads were pretty cool in that if you started your movement and ended your movement on a road hex, then you could move an additional hex and still battle. So you'd be able to move to and then battle. So basically that's it from the Mediterranean pack, Mediterranean Theater expansion for Memoir 44. As I said, it brings the British ground forces into the fray and really kind of livens things up with a couple of new rules for those new troops. I will say, though, that in order to get the full effect of the Mediterranean Theater, you will probably also have to purchase the Desert board, which comes with a winter side as well. So this is kind of a 2-for-1, folks. There was a winter and desert board expansion that also came out, and in order to get the full effect of the Mediterranean Theater and then also the Eastern Theater pack that I'm going to be talking about later on, you'll probably need to purchase this guy as well. So Desert and Winter board expansion and the Mediterranean Theater expansion for Memoir 44. Go check them out. See you on the flip side, folks.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.